Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Morrison. Thank you so much for being a part of our webinar today. This is our first one we've ever done, so we're actually thrilled with the response. There's almost 300 people signed up, almost 500 people signed up, 300 are in the room right now. So we're just gonna wait 2 or 3 more minutes just to get people signed up, get them, make sure they have any, make sure they don't have any issues. You might notice there's a part where you could ask questions. If you have any questions, just put them there. We're going to be able to ask our attendees questions, our panelists questions as we get going. So sit tight. We'll get started in a few minutes. Thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. I'm thrilled to have you here. Hi, everyone. Mike Morrison here, coming to you from Calgary, Alberta. Webinar is ready to go. We're just going to give it 2 more minutes for more people to sign in. We're at 331, which is absolutely fantastic. So sit tight. Everything is working just fine. We're just going to give it 2 more minutes, and we'll get started right at 12:35. Thank you so much. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Of course, you can't say how you're doing, but I feel the energy is good here today. I'm thrilled to have you here. There's over 300, almost 40 people here, which is amazing since we just created this on Wednesday night, and here we are on Friday. I want to introduce myself. My name is Mike Morrison. I'm here in Calgary, Alberta, and there's people joining us today from all over the world, which is absolutely fantastic because I think this is one of the first times in a long time where the world is united in what's going on and how to deal with it. And as marketers and small business owners and communicators, I think it's a great time to come together, unified, and get through this together. And so a little bit about myself. I'm a small business owner here in Calgary, Alberta. I run some digital conferences, digital marketing conferences, SocialWest here in Calgary, SocialEast in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and SocialCentral in Ottawa. They are, of course, all on hold until the fall right now. And so, like so many of you, our role as digital marketers and communicators is sort of felt like it was in pause, and it felt really challenging the last few days to sort of have all this forward momentum of the last few years and then have it just put on pause. And so we came up with this webinar to really give people a chance to be together and hear what everyone else is doing. And so what I did is I gathered some of our speakers from our conferences, and they're coming to you from all across Canada. And we're going to be talking to all of them throughout this. But first, I want to make sure that we thank a sponsor. We had a sponsor come up last minute because, truth be told, I signed up for the free GoToMeeting webinar, which was 100 attendees, and then so many of you signed up that I needed to upgrade. And so a sponsor came in, Skeeter Media, which is here in Calgary, Alberta. They're Calgary-based multimedia and learning technology company focused on innovative learning systems and engaging learning experiences. They offer a full suite of web and video and audio graphic production services. They're just really fantastic. And as you all know, money is very important right now. For them to step up and make sure that as many people could join this webinar as possible is really, really fantastic. So make sure you visit them at skeeter.media. I really, really appreciate having them here with us today. So these are weird and uncertain times. There's literally no one that's been through this before, and I don't know any marketers, anyone that, I think we all sort of feel stunted a bit in terms of what are we going to do. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk to 4 different people from across Canada who have varying different experiences working with brands and companies and nonprofits. We're going to hear about what they're going to be doing and how they're handling the last 2 weeks, the next few weeks. There is a questions option, so if you have any questions, we're monitoring those questions and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Obviously, we have a lot of questions happening. So I'll tell you who we're going to have here today. We're going to have Alicia Taggio. She's the Senior Manager of Customer Service at Tradable Bits. She's based in Vancouver. Jessica Fralick. She's the Director of Crisis Communications at Edelman, Canada, and she is based in Toronto. And then we have Adam Rozenhart and Tyler Butler. Adam is the Director of Storing Communications at ATB, which is one of the major banks here in Alberta. And Tyler Butler also works at ATB, and he's the Senior Manager of External Communications. And so I love the variety that we have here today. It's a very varied mix of people and experiences. And this is our first webinar, and so it seems to be going well okay so far, but if you have any feedback or anything like that, please let us know. This is super fun for me. I know that it's been really nice even just to have something to think about the last 2 days, to gather people and to have people united all around the world for 45 minutes feels really, really special. So like I said, we have questions. Please feel free to ask them. But I think we'll bring in Alicia Taggio, Senior Manager of Customer Success at Tradable Bits. Hi, Alicia. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. How's Vancouver treating you today?
It's good. It's good. We've actually had nice weather lately, which is also slightly devastating because I can't really go out and enjoy it. But
I know.
Good, all things considering.
Truth be told, I was supposed to be in Vancouver today, and I was looking at the forecast, so it's painful to see that I can't be there. So I'm glad you can enjoy it from your patio or your sunny living room, it looks like.
Out from my balcony.
There you go. So Alicia, tell us about your role at Tradable Bits. What does Tradable Bits do?
Yeah, so we are a fan-based marketing technology platform. So we work predominantly with people in the music, sports, and entertainment world. And so my job is to work with essentially all of our partners across those different industries. And I have an amazing team of people that work with us. Some specialize in sports, some specialize in music. And we basically help these brands with their fan marketing initiatives, right? So everything from how they're engaging with their fans online right through to in-venue activations as well. And just being able to get to know who your fans are a little bit better when you're doing, engagement campaigns and capturing data. It's like, how can we learn about our fans and market to them a little bit more effectively? So we take a lot of their data, help them understand who their fans are, and then use those audiences to market the right messages on the right channels.
And what a time, I mean, think of some of the industries that have been the most impacted by everything. I mean, the concerts, the festivals, the sports, they're gone. They're
Actors.
yeah, they're going to be champions indefinitely, maybe. Yeah. Forever champions.
I was at SocialWest when the Raptors won last year, so
yeah. Yeah, they won at SocialWest, which is the conference we do in Calgary. That was really fun. So what has the last 2 weeks looked like for you?
It's been eventful, that's for sure. I think what the first thing a lot of our clients decided to do was to put a pause on a lot of their advertising, because a lot of them are promoting, for example, a music festival that might be a little bit, even if it's later in the year, they didn't want to seem tone deaf or insensitive to the times and what's happening right now. So a lot of people have chosen to just put a bit of a halt on some of their advertising, hopefully temporarily. So, they can pick things up again in the future. But yeah, I think that was the first kind of step a lot of the brands have taken is, we know this is happening. We're aware of it. Let's make sure that all of our scheduled messages and everything we had planned for the rest of the, month isn't tone deaf to what's happening right now. So a lot of people have been going through their social media calendars and maybe pausing and moving messages or deleting them or rewording them all together. I know there was a lot of March Madness scheduled and planned, right, for all brands. So everyone kind of had to put a bit of a pause and a halt on that. And then a lot of people have just been, working with their PR and comms team to make sure that they're getting messages out to their fans, whether it was an upcoming concert, festival, or sporting. As you know, a lot of sports teams have put their, their seasons on hold for now, and trying to just figure out what the next best steps are, right? So a lot of them now, especially in the sports world, actually are looking at ways to engage with their fans online during this downtime. So we're having a lot of really interesting conversations with clients around what can we do? Let's treat this like an off season. What would we normally do during an off season? Well, we would engage with our fans online. So it's coming up when brainstorming a lot of ideas right now of fun ways to engage with fans, even though sports games aren't happening, So it's everything from live streaming to SMS engagement to online contests and engagement campaigns, just to keep those fans engaged during this weird down period right now.
And do you find it's the players or the bands or the artists that are sort of spearheading those social media campaigns in a way?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, what's super interesting now is a lot of athletes and celebrities are turning to that dark social environment that I've always been talking about for the past few years at SocialWest and stuff. Is a lot of social is going to these private environments now where people are talking on WhatsApp and Messenger, and SMS is a very big trend right now. It's not a new thing. It's been around forever, but it's becoming more and more popular. So it's super
interesting. Just for clarity, can you just describe SMS? So just in case there's people who are tuning in.
It's essentially text messaging engagement, right? So essentially what a brand or an artist can do is choose to start building a database of people who want to opt in to hear from that brand or that person via SMS. And once they've agreed to opting in, then you can send them SMS messages, and those can have links in them. They can have images. You can do MMS, which is having an image or a GIF. And you can engage with people one-on-one. And the cool thing about SMS is people actually open their SMSs like almost instantaneously when they get one, even if it's from a brand. So the open rates are really good, the click-through rates are really good, and it's just a really good way to engage with people outside of your standard organic social media channels. We find that they tend to get really good engagement. So there's actually like platforms out there now called Community, which are allowing celebrities and athletes to use their platform to engage with people. So you'll notice now people like Amy Schumer are saying on social media, hey, like text this number and I'll chat with you over SMS. And so you can have this one-on-one conversation with Amy, and she can send stuff out to all of her fans at the same time. So it's super interesting how people are turning to that model now of SMS engagement. And so it's something we're even encouraging a lot of our clients to do with our own platform is, this is a great time to send out messages and tell people what's going on, right? Like, what are you guys doing? What are the plans? So yeah, I see there's a poll here. Have you ever used SMS for audience engagement? That's awesome. I can't vote, I'm not an attendee, but yeah, it's super interesting. If you haven't thought about SMS, definitely give it a consideration and start building a database now. You can do that by adding to your website an opt-in form, adding something to your next contest or engagement campaign, or having people simply text a number to opt in to agree to the terms and conditions, and start building that database, because we don't know how long this is going to be, in this weird space that we're in. So it's a good time.
I think that's good advice. So maybe we're building strategies to navigate the next few weeks or months, but there are also strategies that will benefit us when we're through this and when we're able to sort of get back to our normal lives.
100%, yeah. Starting to think about an SMS database now is a really smart thing to do. So if you haven't thought about it, it's actually relatively easy to get up and running. There's a lot of tools out there now that can help you do it.
One of the big things right now, of course, is budgets. Budgets are being slashed everywhere, cut. Everyone's holding their money. They're just waiting to see what happens. Do you have advice for brands and public sector social media, and really anyone that's having to navigate social media and digital marketing with a very limited budget, if a budget at all?
Totally. I would definitely find brands that align with yours to team up with. This is a time for us to come together as communities. So definitely find out if there's, a local charity or a local restaurant or company that makes sense for your brand to align with, because if you're cross promoting each other, it helps create awareness and get your messages out there. And then the other thing too is, there's still a lot you can do with organic social. If anything, people are on their phones and devices more now than they ever have been, because they're pretty bored at home, right? So this is actually a great time to start thinking about your content strategy. We actually have time to sit down and plan out our content calendars now, because maybe we're less worried about running, March break, spring break, type of campaigns. We can actually sit down and say, okay, let's use this time to strategize. What do we want our content strategy to be? Do we need to change the model of our business? For example, a lot of restaurants and bars obviously can't open to the public right now, but maybe they can move to a model of online delivery and pickup only. And I know there's been quite a few here in Vancouver, and they've teamed up with other restaurants as well, so that they're offering cool things like staff meals, where people can essentially buy a meal that they can put like a soup or whatever in their freezer for later, but a portion of that money also goes towards feeding the chefs. And, it's a time right now where they aren't making a lot of money, and they do rely on the food when they go into work, right, to eat every day. So, and then a portion of all those sales are actually going towards the local food bank as well, to help people who don't have easy access to food. So definitely team up with brands that it makes sense to team up with if you don't have a budget to work with.
So nice collaboration, right? So maybe that collaboration you've been thinking about, but you haven't had time to think about. Now we have nothing but time. So yeah. We're getting some questions. I'll just read them to you. Shalini asks, back to the SMS question. Do you have recommendations for platforms for SMS?
Sure, yeah. The main one that a lot of brands use is called Twilio, Twilio. And what you do is you purchase your numbers through them, and you can figure out what area codes you want and all that kind of stuff. It is predominantly a pretty like dev heavy platform though, so ideally you want to like start your account with them, buy your messages, and have that as your database. But in terms of the tool you use to send out those messages, there's a number of different tools out there that do that, where you just connect your Twilio. So I would definitely start by like checking out companies like Twilio. Twilio is definitely the ones a lot of our clients are using, and we connect their Twilio account with our account so that they can send out an SMS campaign.
Okay, great. And in our conclusion email, our wrap-up email will include links to anything that we mentioned here today,
totally.
So people can.
And then the other company too is, I know they're only on a beta right now, and it's only open to like celebrities and artists at the moment, but is Community. So if you check out Community, that's also an interesting SMS company as well. It's really doing some cool things in that space.
I know a food company that I get text SMS from is it's called Inspire to Go, and they deliver food to certain buildings here in Calgary. So at 8 a.m. I get a text being like, here's today's menu. I text back saying what I want, and then it's right there waiting for me. It's really, I've never ordered something on text before, and it's working out really well.
Yeah, it's super easy, and it's super easy to opt out. All you say is stop, and you're opted out. It's a super easy opt-in, opt-out process, and it's easy to join a list again even after you said stop. So yeah, it's definitely a great way to engage people.
And there's a question, another about the SMS, and you sort of just touched on it there, but Karen was wondering about, like, do you have advice for not seeming too pushy or too invasive, especially right now? Like, what's the language, what's the narrative we should be talking about right now?
Totally. I think first and foremost, we need to just be transparent with our customers, with our fans, that we don't know all the answers right now. A lot of them are looking for timelines. We don't have that. So I think being transparent and honest in your communication is the best thing to do right now, is just be honest and say, listen, we'd love to give you a date of when this event might be rescheduled to, but we don't know that. So in the meantime, here's what we are doing and what is in our control, and try and keep your messaging to creating value for that customer or that fan. I'm a big proponent of, like, don't just put noise out there for the sake of doing it, because it's very noisy right now. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of emails. Everyone's talking about what they're doing to, deal with this pandemic right now. And if you're not really adding value to that person, then why are you sending a message, right? What are you hoping that person will do on the other end of that message? Don't just send a message for the sake of it. So definitely have a plan in place. And sometimes that means taking a step back, thinking about your strategy. Maybe you have to change your business model a bit. But if your service was something in person, how can you flip your business model to be a little bit more digital and online now, and then send out your message and communicate to them that, hey, we know that this is happening. We've had to shut our doors, but here's what you can do to still support us. You can buy your stuff online. We've just launched our online website, our e-commerce, whatever, and let them know how they can still interact and participate in whatever it is that your brand offering is.
Yeah, I think I really understand what you're saying about the noise. I've seen so many jokes about Twitter, on Twitter, just saying like, oh, I'm so glad that I know what Taco Bell thinks about the coronavirus now. Like, I really needed that insight. So it's, and like people saying I didn't.
Yeah. Like, I want to know, are the people in the back room that are still working, like the chefs, are they wearing gloves? Are they like, what are we doing? Like, how are you offering social distancing if you're still making those people come to work every day? People really do care how you're treating their employees right now and what it means for the safety of their food too, right? So
it's a time to maybe assess, like, sort of that know your role right now. So like, if you're a company that doesn't need to talk about the coronavirus, you can sit out, you can come back to us next week. There'll be lots of time.
Lots of opportunity. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay, Alicia, thank you so much. You're going to come back at the end of this webinar to answer some questions from the audience. I really appreciate your insight. It's been very helpful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, the questions, we're going to try to get to as many as we can. If we can't get to all of them, what we might do is send the questions to our panelists afterwards and email you some of the answers and insights and things like that. So hope you guys are enjoying this so far. It seems like everything's going well. Up next, we have Jessica Fralick. She's the account director of Edelman, and she works specifically she's the director of crisis communications at Edelman Canada. So she's a great person to talk to right now. We have her speak at all our conferences, SocialWest, SocialEast, and SocialCentral. There she is there. Hi, Jessica. How are you? Good. I think you have to unmute your microphone, maybe. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So Jessica is based in Toronto, Ontario, and we're super excited to have you. How's it going today, Jessica?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I think we're on day 8 of being inside my house, so super fun.
And you just moved to Toronto, so you get to explore it from your apartment for a little while.
Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jessica, tell us a little bit about your role at Edelman in crisis communications.
So I am a director of crisis and risk at Edelman. So Edelman, for those of you that don't know, is a global public relations firm. So we do have crisis communications experts across all regions that we operate. So we have 67 offices around the world. And so as you can imagine, we have actually been working with the coronavirus communications since about January. We have colleagues in China as well as in Italy. So all of the really heavy hit countries at this point, we have people that have kind of gone through all of the various stages that those countries have gone through. So it's been very interesting, a very trying time, definitely, for people who work within crisis communications. But it's also what we do all the time. So it's just kind of a little bit intensified what we do on our daily basis.
So it's definitely been, I think a lot of people are maybe shell-shocked how quickly this is happening. But for a lot of people, you've been dealing with this for months and you've been worried about your colleagues all over the world. And now it's come to North America and do you feel, what are those strategies, I guess, that you've been doing to get your clients ready for this?
So I think as much as we knew that it was happening, it's kind of hard to tell how it's going to happen within your own country. So we have been taking it day by day in Canada as well. I think last Wednesday, the 11th, was kind of the tipping point for most people and most companies. I think when the NBA made the announcement that they were canceling the season, people were like, whoa, this is a big deal. So yes, we had been preparing, but there's only so much that you can do when clients aren't asking for counsel. So we had a lot of communications and stuff prepared in different kind of guides for clients on how to talk to employees, how to talk to customers, how to talk to external stakeholders. But really it is done on a case-by-case basis. So it really depends on what your business is, how impacted you are, if your customers are going to be impacted by the coronavirus, what industry you're in. So as much as you can prepare for this, we were prepared, but it still is every single day, different challenges and different problems. And then every time there is an announcement by the government, a different decision is made, then we have to pivot and think of new considerations for all of the communications that are going out.
What advice do you have for companies and the variety of people on this who are listening to this webinar, sort of, 1-2 person companies to some pretty giant companies? What advice do you have for them communicating online during a crisis? I think a lot of people are worried about being insensitive or getting their timing wrong or opportunistic. What would you advise for them?
Well, I think that it's important to remember this is not like a normal crisis. So a normal crisis typically has an incident and you're kind of in it and then it goes down and then you have recovery. Basically every time there's an announcement and every time the issue gets larger, there's a new series of challenges. So it's not typical to crisis communications by any means. I feel like it's a new crisis every day. But what I would say is everybody needs to think about people and how people are being impacted and who is looking at your content and how they are going to be receiving that. And it's a little bit difficult because everybody is in a different situation. So you have people at one end of the spectrum who are very negatively impacted by this. family deaths, potentially they are sick themselves, a lot of job loss, a lot of job uncertainty, a lot of financial situations that people are in that are very severe and I think are going to last for a really long time. And so that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end is the people that don't really think at this point that it's a big deal, or maybe they live somewhere where there are no cases of the virus yet. And so you have a very broad spectrum of people. And so my advice always is to like think about your audience and where they are at and where they're kind of sitting. Consider all of those different types of people, and then how the communications and the content and stuff that you are providing to them, how is that going to land with the current situation? I would say the biggest piece of advice that I've been giving to my clients is you might land on something today that's going to work, but tomorrow something might happen which makes it not work. So always be looking at your content and reevaluating what it is that you're putting out into the market, because something else might happen that makes it now not acceptable. So I have been doing a lot of reviews of in-market content for clients over the past couple of weeks. We have been adjusting a lot of content. So we had some campaigns that were in market that revolved around people taking their kids to hockey practice, which we then had to go in and adjust because people are very sensitive about anything that triggers them to something that they no longer have access to, or they feel like they've been restricted from. So people have to be really considerate of those things as well.
There's a question here from Ashley, and sort of relevant to what we're talking about here is like regularly scheduled content. I think we're all sort of coming up against every now and then people who are like, no, it's business as usual. My opinion is that it's not business as usual. Do you have advice for people who don't have critical COVID-19 messaging, how they stay relevant in this ever-changing world?
It's a great question, and I think that's something that I've dealt with clients with as well. So should we say or do something when our business is not relevant to the current situation? We have no ties to it. And can we just do regular content? And in some cases, yes. I would say I don't know what the future holds in the next couple of weeks. I would say that we're probably going to be doing social distancing, self-isolation for a number of weeks, maybe even months. And so people need to start thinking about types of content that you could be putting out about your business that maybe is kind of normal, everyday drumbeat content, but would still land because people are on their phones and people are looking for things to do. But definitely thinking about the current situation is really important. I do think that there is a lot of organizations that are doing jumping into the COVID-19 conversation in a helpful way very well. There's a lot of brands, businesses, so people that have gyms that are now doing online workout classes for free that they're offering to people, and different activities like that. If you can link your business, your organization to something that is useful to where people are at right now and creating content around that, I think that's great. But I think that there still is a place for that everyday content, but you just have to be very careful about it. I think we're kind of getting into this state, depending, I can't say what will or will not happen within the next couple of weeks. But once it kind of calms down in the sense of people are kind of normalized to where we're at now, which is like in our homes, they will be more receptive to that type of content.
Yeah, I think there's this period right now where we're all going a bit fidgety, trying to sit in our homes, trying to adjust to it. But if we're doing this for a few weeks and maybe months, like there will be a time where it's just a bit of the new normal, and hopefully that normal's not too long. Yeah. But it feels like that. Right before I signed into this webinar, I saw a local photographer here in Calgary called Neil Zeller. He has obviously hit very hard. He does event photography. And so he's doing porch photos where he'll drive up in front of your house with his telescopic lens, and your family will go out on the porch and he'll take your family photos. And I just thought that's so innovative. That's so clever to say, hey, I'm still going to take your photos. I'm still abiding by all the rules of social distancing, but I'm going to still try to make some money and maybe spread a bit of cheer too. And I thought, he's just one photographer, but how clever that is. And getting people to talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah. There's another question here. Lots of questions for you, Jessica. You're very popular. Ted asks, the usual advice during a crisis is to stop advertising. But Jessica said that using social ads is a good idea to reach people. How and why do you see social ads? How and why do you use social ads? And are there challenges you've encountered?
So yes, during a normal crisis, if there was something to do with your company and that's all anyone's paying attention to at the moment, I would definitely recommend pausing all online ads. Because we're going through phases of ups and downs. I would say right now, currently in this moment, it's kind of a testy space, definitely within the last week. But as I said, as you go along and it becomes more normalized for people, you're still in a crisis, but people are a little bit more used to it. So they're a little less triggered by things that are going to go out. How you use it is really just making sure that you are being very sensitive to the situation and really reviewing everything that you're putting out. There's no real more guidance I can put on that besides being sensitive means not capitalizing on the situation. So if anybody thinks that you are doing something with the sole purpose of, selling something or making a profit based on the situation, you probably will get roasted for that. So I don't recommend it. But I do think that there's ways to still promote stuff within this time that's not offensive or will land poorly with people.
Yogi asks, Jessica, are there any lessons from your Edelman colleagues from China or Italy that would be useful to crisis communicators here? Did you have any interaction?
It's a very different, those two are very different situations, obviously, because China was the first. So they were really in the dark around how this is going to pan out for them. Italy had a very different, obviously, situation than I would assume that most of the people on this call are in Canada, North America.
Yeah.
Mike said they're from all over, but I think that we are seeing that we are dealing with a much different situation. I think that people are taking the social distancing a lot more seriously here than they did in, say, Italy. And so we are able to flatten the curve, I think, a little bit more than they were able to do there. So it's a little bit different and it will go on longer. So the key learnings from their perspective would be really full crisis the whole time, which is, you wouldn't be doing ads. You wouldn't be doing any of that stuff. It's less like fun workout things at home and more like everyone is very, very seriously concerned. Whereas here, I think it's going to go on a lot longer. It will be still severe, but I think that there is still a space for other communications that are not related to the virus.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we'll do one more question, then we'll move on to our next panelist, Jessica. Do you have advice for companies that want to support people during this time? Appropriate way to talk to customers or things like that? Do you have the words? I think people are really nervous about.
For sure. And so what I think is really important that if you want to go out and you want to support people or another agency or anything during this time is really looking at what your core purpose is as a business and making sure that links to whatever it is that you're doing. There needs to be, it needs to land on your values as an organization. And it needs to make sense to people. So if you're doing something and you're going out and doing good and people can't understand why your company is doing that, they might think you're just doing it to get attention in the midst of what's going on. So really just making sure that whatever you're doing really does link back to your core business and your core values and what you've always kind of done as an organization. So really think about, at a normal time, what types of organizations would you support? What types of things could you do for people? And then try to go in that direction if you're going to be doing something to help.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, complicated times for sure. Okay, thank you so much, Jessica. You probably are just insanely busy during times like this. So we really appreciate you taking some time. We're
No
going to see
problem.
you in a few more minutes. We'll do a little group hang at the end to answer some more questions. But thank you so much for your insight, Jessica. All right, so thank you so much for the questions. I see them coming in. We're going to try to get to as many of them as possible. Our final panelists for today are some speakers that we've used at Alberta, at SocialWest quite a bit, and they always rank up number 1 or 2 of the highest ranked speakers. They're a little dynamic duo. I love them. Adam Rozenhart and Tyler Butler, Director of Story Communication, that's Adam's role, and Senior Manager External Communications, Tyler's role at ATB. It's Alberta Treasury Branch, right? I think the letters stand for. But basically a bank, a very popular, very community-focused bank here in Alberta. So thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi, guys. Hi. So you guys normally work in close quarters, right? Is it hard to be separated? Do you miss each other?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously don't get the opportunity to cuddle quite as often as we used to, but we're pretty used to working from home as well.
I can
Still
still
online
imagine what
company.
your arms feel like around me, so
Yeah, I mean,
I have that to hang on to.
that's good.
Fantastic, fantastic. So why don't you guys quickly, we're a bit behind schedule because I think there's so many good questions, but why don't you quickly tell the audience a little bit about your roles at ATB and what the last week or so has been like for you guys?
Yeah, so Tyler and I are on the greater external communications team. We've got a little mini team called the Story Team. There's 2 other colleagues that work with us, and our role on that team is really to manage ATB's social media presence. And in normal times, would be to share with our customers and followers the great stories of how we're helping the province of Alberta as ATB Financial.
And what's the last week been like? It feels like it changed so quickly. You must have had to change so much of your communications, Tyler.
Absolutely, yeah. Banking is obviously an essential service, not just here in Alberta, but everywhere. So this situation has had very real ramifications for people who might be experiencing job uncertainty. It's created fear, and people want to think about their money in times like that. So for us, it's been about communicating very important messages, messages that people really need to hear, and making sure we're doing it as quickly as we can and as accurately as possible. And down the road, maybe we'll be able to do some fun storytelling, but the last week has been pretty serious.
And I just want to read some questions here. How do you manage? How have you been managing your social media channels the last few weeks, last week or so? And are you planning what Monday looks like?
Sorry, I'll go ahead, Tyler. I'll say like the first thing that we did was we communicated with the folks on our brand team that all ads needed to be paused, and all the plans we had about content that was going to be coming out over the next few days, we kind of just pushed off into the future. And it became very much, I would say, at times, at least initially, hour by hour, day by day communications. We knew that we needed to let people know what kind of relief programs we were creating for customers. Like every financial institution, I believe at this point in Canada, has released that information. And also the other piece that really concerns people, particularly some of the seniors that bank with us, is access to our physical locations. They're among the most vulnerable people right now in terms of catching COVID-19. And so we're actually starting a gradual phased closure of our branches, not only to protect them, but also we've got team members who are at home with their children now because schools are closed. So it really has been very much in the moment, but like we're doing 2 or 3 stand-ups with our team every day to figure out what the next wave of information is that needs to go out.
I have a really important comment here from one of our listeners. Jason says he also misses your cuddles. So just so we're where we're all at. I think people now are, you guys are a bank. People have perceptions of banks. How do you talk to them right now in a human way?
Yeah, humanity is a big part of our brand and our voice. So we have some license to play with there. There's kind of 2 parts to that. One, our team is always keeping in mind that we're talking to real people going through very serious situations. We've had some folks who in normal times might have come across as very angry or very upset, and remembering to take a step back and to remember that these are people who are afraid that they will have no income, and that there are very real fears that are causing people to act a little bit differently, and making sure that we are overwhelmingly kind and empathetic at every phase of our communications. I think that that's been really important. And also just remembering that we're humans and we'll probably make some mistakes along the way, and we're all figuring out how to work from home and communicate digitally, and that we're allowed to ask for our audience's forgiveness at certain times when things take longer than they expect. And that has been received exceptionally well. Kindness has been the overwhelming narrative when we looked at our sentiment so far.
That's really interesting. It feels, I think if you asked someone to describe this week, they would probably say scary, but you're seeing a lot of kindness as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, I would say that like you sort of get that initial level of service demand from people who are freaked out about what's happening with their personal situation. But as soon as you sort of connect with them in a human way, and you know, we set out these really critical rules of engagement when we're talking to customers on social media. And I think, you know, one of the things that I feel like we're doing a little bit better than perhaps some of our competitors is we're not just pasting key messages into a field and hitting send. We're reading every single customer message and trying to address each of their points. Because that's the way that you develop empathy, is by really listening and feeling like, you know, there is that empathy in that, and you are customizing a response to people. It's not just, you know, phone this number and we'll get to you. It's, boy, we really hear that you're worried and that you're hurting. We know you've got a mortgage that you're worried about. You know, if you reach out to us here, we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. And people have been really, really receptive to it.
That's amazing. That's advice. That's good advice at a non-time of crisis, you know, to even, you know, to never copy and paste a reply and things like that. But at times like this, when people are looking, you know, they're just reaching for someone to help them, to write back a human answer is probably incredibly helpful.
I think so. I think it's been part of why people have reacted well to us. And one of the things we're trying to do is, as I mentioned, go to the way to be kind to everyone, but also to kind of mirror the emotions people are bringing to us. If they're bringing concern, then we're going to respond in a more comforting way. But some people have reacted with humor. I had a conversation about pygmy goats on our Twitter channel this morning, and that's okay too. Like let these folks guide the conversation and mirror what they're bringing to you.
Well, that's a question we have here, was someone asking, like, when can we be funny on social media? When can we be, I mean, I'm someone who uses my social media a lot just to sort of be funny and quirky and sarcastic and stuff like that. And, you know, it's been interesting for us the last couple of weeks. And when do you think a brand, a nonprofit, whoever can, you know, have a bit of fun on social media again?
Yeah, I think it's gonna depend entirely upon, like, it's all context, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Like, you know, just for example, Alberta, the province we're in, registered unfortunately its first death from COVID-19 yesterday. So, you know, some people might be feeling that pretty heavily right now. And I think Tyler said it best. You kind of just mirror what's being thrown at you by folks talking to you on social media. Like, some people just want direct answers, but others are looking for maybe a more delightful engagement. Because things are such a bummer right now. So I guess the best advice I can give there is to kind of read the room and try to understand where the folks who are talking to you on social are coming from.
We're in a phase right now where we are just like disseminating information. So like it'll probably be a while before we are being funny, but there's also context in who we are. We're a bank. It's important right now that we are seriously thinking about how to deliver our services to people. If you're a comedian, the time to be funny is right now, because I don't know about you, but I could really use a laugh, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Charlotte asks, how do you deal with criticisms towards how your business is handling the situation? And I don't think that means like your business, but like a business. You know, if someone, you're mentioning being human and all those things, but if someone reads that wrong or thinks, you know, your response is not appropriate at the time, do you have a strategy for those kind of situations?
Yeah, of course, we've seen it. So there's a few things. One, we have some infrastructure behind us because we're an institution. So we also, those in Alberta will know, but our brand promise is ATB listen. So we're taking those complaints very seriously and escalating them to the right people to get real answers. And some of them have already informed the way that we're approaching this situation. So essentially, there are opportunities to just be humble and accept genuine feedback. The other thing that we're doing is keeping an always up to date, essentially frequently asked questions document in our social plan. So this is obviously the most serious crisis I've been a part of, but it's also not my first one. So part of what we're able to do is predict and prepare for, okay, we're offering this service. What if people say this? We're telling people to call us on the phone. What if all the phone lines go down? And we're doing some of that predictive preparation that's helping us just be ready with answers as situations come up. And it means we haven't been blindsided in a major way yet, although please don't read that as an invitation.
Noted. And I find that too last week, we run events, and so obviously we're heavily impacted, and my brain was swirling trying to figure out the solution, but what I found was to write out 8 solutions. And so if plan A is this, if this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, we're going to do this. And that all of those helped me. And as those situations happened, I felt like a bit more prepared. I'm like, okay, well, I thought about that, so now I'm going to do this kind of thing. And I think that sounds like that's how you guys have been preparing. What tool are you guys using tools to make sure your messages for ATB are coherent across your social media platforms?
Yeah, I would say like maybe not super sophisticated, but the story team manages all of our social media channels through Salesforce Social Studio. So that's like your Hootsuite or your Sprout Social, so that we're not tripping over each other, and we're making sure that if Tyler's answered a message from a customer, I'm not going in and then doing the same thing. So that's one. Another key piece of communications that my team uses is Slack. So we've created channels for different projects. We've got a COVID-19 channel where I'm sharing with the team news that I'm hearing from leadership. We're assigning work through there. And then, of course, on our larger external comms team, we're collaborating in documents using something as simple as Google Docs and making sure that we aren't creating multiple sources of truth. That's so critical, not only for your customers, but for your team members, to ensure that everyone is literally singing from the same song sheet.
So we have one social media plan that's all of the messaging that's going out, all the messaging that might go out, and our FAQ, and our team is in charge of that document, and we are pulling people into it absolutely as necessary. And then single source of truth that we haven't got here yet, but we also just have one place on our website where all of our information about COVID-19 lives. That link is what we are continually updating instead of posting new updates all the time. It means that every social post we have shared is always up to date, and we're able to indicate from the beginning, this link, no matter when you encounter it, even if you're encountering our posts out of order in your feed, this link will always have the latest information. So all of our teams internally and externally are just living that single source of truth mantra, and I think it's helping us to get through this first wave.
That's that's such good advice to make sure you're not having like different pages of information. So, and having one page and saying updated at what time or what day, and so people know that there's so much information out there. Well, that's super fantastic. Well, why don't we've gone over a bit. Let's wrap up in 7-8 minutes. Let's bring in the other panelists, Alicia and Jessica. There's some group questions here. It'll just take a second here, I think, to get them on board. Yeah, it's been really, there's Alicia, and I think Jessica will join us shortly. There you go. Hi, everyone. Oh, this is so fun. This is amazing. I want to thank you, you guys, because you guys really stepped up when we came up with this idea 2 days ago. So I appreciate it so much. Oh, look at that. I love it. Okay. So some questions here and you guys can just weigh in however you want. I'm just going to read them out loud. If you have a very small team and you cannot keep updating, reevaluating content, do you recommend not putting things on more permanent spots like websites, like in a blog post, and stick to social media?
I'll go ahead with this one. I think actually what I would recommend is at times like this, you want a blog or a website to contain the most relevant up-to-date information. And what you're using social media for is to funnel people to that source. Because otherwise you're going to have to make sure that you've updated the right information on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat. And that's going to get a little onerous for a team of 1 or 2 people.
Jessica, you have to unmute your microphone, Jess, sorry. There we go.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Technology. I would say as far as content goes, so if the question is more around, you know, if I need to review my content and then I put a blog post up and then next week it's offensive, should I then take it down? I think for those types of content, like people know when you posted them, they're dated. I think that if it's fine at the time, it should be okay to leave up. When you're running ads that are then being served to people, those are the things that you need to be looking at on a regular basis.
Yeah, definitely. I would echo that sentiment. Is take a look at what you're spending your ads on. So look at all your live ads right now and figure out which ones should be turned off.
Yeah, and I think too, like looking even the image as your posts, like we work in the event industry, and when someone's like, oh, we're going to be doing a live Instagram with, you know, a singer tonight, and it's an old photo, but it's the photo of them with their arm around them. I'm like, it makes me like cringe a bit. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be touching them, right? Like it's just looking at all your content with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that at this date, March 20th, this is appropriate to be posting, even if it was appropriate 5 days ago. Okay, some other questions. When is it appropriate to send newsletters and non-essential info to customers? What if you just want to send them regular information that has nothing to do with what's going on?
100% thought you just said nude photos and
Oh, yeah,
you said newsletters. Okay.
Sorry. It's appropriate to send nude photos without
never, Mike.
to clarify.
Oh my gosh. I think that you can still send out things, but making sure that it's relevant for what's going on right now. Like, I don't think that if you have a monthly newsletter that you are like, I have to get it out. We send it out every month. You have to remember, especially things that are going to email, every single company is sending out emails right now about what they are doing for COVID-19. So if it is non-essential for like direct to consumer email communications, I would suggest not sending it out.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of what I was saying earlier about adding value, right? Like, what is the content of your newsletter? You know that a lot of people are at home right now. Is there something of value you can offer to people who are stuck at home? You know, I don't know what kind of a brand you are, but is it like things you can do at home, whether it's health or food that they can be making, recipes you could be sharing, tips on lowering your anxiety, like whatever's relevant to your brand. This is a time where people are seeking advice. They have a little bit more time to read. So if it is something that's going to create value for the person, then yes, send it out. But if it's completely not relevant and it's obviously something that, you know, they can't go out and experience, or it's something they can't purchase online, then consider holding off on it if it's not quite as relevant right now.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, realistically, we're in this holding pattern for 3 weeks, if we're lucky, you know what I mean? So like week 3, people are going to be really thirsty for content and things to do. And so if you don't have something right now, you don't have to. Maybe you take 2 weeks to come up with something really awesome for week 3 or week 4.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, lots of questions here. I'm going to read this one. It's long, but I'll just read it to you. Any advice on the direction of content for a publicly traded company that has a far reach across many industries, including healthcare, emergency management, cybersecurity, etc.? We've implemented a strict review process from our crisis comms department for our corporate channels. That being said, some of our subject experts have been releasing content that was not reviewed nor approved before release on their personal profiles. That mentions that company. Do you have any advice? That's a long one, but I guess publicly traded companies and their messaging right now. that falls under you guys a bit, Adam and Tyler, now.
Well,
maybe just taking the second part of it, but it's something we got in front of actually, is asking some of our internal influencers and team members, reminding them that our strategy around this was driving people to a single source of truth, and we'd appreciate their help amplifying that, but that at this time we weren't looking to go out with individual messaging, and everyone has been amazing with that. I think it's a time where everyone is trying to help. So especially leaders and thought leaders are trying to say things that are helpful and provide their expertise. But it's also important that we're streamlined in our messaging right now. So that, for us, that was a simple email, and it was an email that was really well received, even though it's easy to think those things will come across harshly.
Yeah, and I think like the reality is that it's very likely you're going to have to talk to a few people who do believe that they are doing the right thing, and let them know in some cases. And this is like the worst part of this kind of job, is having to be the social media thought police. But we have had to remind a few team members, what you're doing right now isn't actually helpful, and you're kind of knocking us off message, even though we know you're trying to help. So those are tough and sensitive conversations.
Okay.
I think what you guys have done too is like creating your internal Slack channel called COVID-19, I think is super key. And so large organizations usually have some sort of internal communication tool, whether that's Facebook Workplace or Slack or whatever, but that is the best way to get all of your employees on the same page, is that central internal communication tool. And then also too, this is a great opportunity. I did a lot of this in my previous role at Hootsuite, was if you don't have an employee advocacy tool in place, this is the perfect opportunity that maybe you could have implemented one, and go to your stakeholders and say, this is why we need a tool, because there are tools out there that can help you as the social and content team curate the messages you want your staff to send out. And they literally just open up that app or whatever the website is, and there's a bunch of pre-approved on-brand messaging that they can send out, and they can choose to personalize it a little bit, put it in their own tone of voice, but it links to the right links. You're able to track the impact, and you're able to report to your stakeholders, we had this many employees share the message, it drove this much traffic to that page, it led to so-and-so and so-and-so. It could even lead to great business results in the end, right? So it's a perfect opportunity to start having conversations about getting an employee advocacy tool in place for large organizations.
Very true. Okay, I asked for 45 minutes of your time. We're already at an hour. I'll just wrap up with one question because we're getting a lot of it. But we'll make this the last question of the day. Do any of you have any messaging or content suggestions for nonprofits navigating the changing environment? I think a lot of them feel maybe like their hands are tied. It's a very desperate time for a lot of them. What advice would you give a nonprofit during these times?
I have a thought on this because I'm on the board for CKUA Radio Foundation here in Alberta. And I think it's important for these organizations to remember what their value is. So for an organization like CKUA, they use music and story to connect Albertans. So we know that a lot of folks in the province don't always want to be thinking or talking about this sort of thing. So you can provide value by playing really cool music that people are super into, that kind of takes their minds off things. You can be a port in a storm. And I think the sort of like question that's maybe not being asked there is, we're going to be a little messed around in terms of our bottom line and asking people for donations because people are going to be hanging on to their money. Show your value in your community and have faith that people will want to support you financially if you're a not-for-profit. Maybe sounds a little naive, but I think people are going to come through for not-for-profit, certainly in Alberta.
There's also been such creative examples already. Our library here in Edmonton is doing story time on Facebook Live with a dog, and it's adorable and creative, and possibly will outlive this crisis as a great comm strategy for that library. So think about those creative opportunities that maybe as our fellow social media managers, you've been trying to pitch for a long time. Maybe now is the opportunity.
I notice a lot of people are doing Instagram lives right now. Like if you turn on your Instagram and log in, you're going to see like 6 live Instagrams happening at the same time.
Yeah.
great. It's great to see people using video. So yeah, take advantage of the tools available. And also for nonprofits, there's a lot of really big organizations that are offering special discounts or their products for free for nonprofits and small businesses. I know Facebook is offering, I think, free ad credits if nonprofits want to run ads right now. So definitely check out what they have on their website about that. I know Hootsuite's offering their professional plan for free till July for nonprofits. So take advantage of like what the big organizations are trying to do to help the nonprofits as well, because there are people that are offering, you know, their services for free right now. So.
And Jessica, we'll leave it with you.
Yeah, I would say I agree with Adam. Like, definitely show your value right now. Messaging around fundraising and getting money from donors and stuff, I think, would probably be inappropriate. But I think you can start planning for how you're going to go back out into market once you've shown your value during the incident, to then re-engage with your stakeholders and your different donors to, you know, get that funding back, whether it's government or whether it is individual donors.
Wonderful, fantastic. I'm just getting a note here. There's so many thank yous. Thank you all for taking some time during these crazy time to share some advice. It's, I don't know, this hour feels so good because for an hour we got to not feel alone and not feel panicked. And I hope everyone listening knows that they're not alone, and you know that we're all in this together, to quote High School Musical, as I often like to do. We're going to make sure that we include all the resources and tools and websites that everyone talked to in the follow-up email. You also get a copy of this video. And lastly, we want to make sure we thank Skeeter Media, who stepped up last minute so we can include as many people in this webinar as possible. So make sure you check out Skeeter Media. Thank you so much, everyone. This was really fun. I hope you enjoy your weekends and keep scrubbing those hands. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.